Hello and welcome to this session's Student CPD, where the focus is going to be academic writing. The reason that we're having a video on this today is because it forms a large part of most A-level subjects, from English literature to law, psychology, sociology, history, English language, and even the sciences. You will be expected at some stage to produce a piece of academic writing, if not during your A-level, for certain when you make it to degree level. Now, there are a number of common errors or mistakes that students make because when they're asked to do academic writing, they're not always aware of what that refers to. So today I'm going to take you through a few examples of things that happen a lot, explain why they happen, and some ways to avoid them. Then I'm going to set you a short challenge of taking a piece of your own writing and reflecting upon it and trying to improve it, following some of those principles. Let's get started. The first thing that your examiner is going to read will be your introduction. The first problem that you have is that you set the tone for the rest of the body of the work that you're going to be producing. And so in this example, you have, in this essay, I am going to. Most scholars would agree that the use of the first person pronoun I is really bad practice, that actually it would be much better to remain very neutral and take yourself out of the equation. Make sure that this essay becomes third person. But actually, when we start to think about the way of refining your work, the best introductions actually begin with approaching the question that you're actually being asked. So rather than tell your examiner what you're going to do, why not start with a statement that is inspired from the question? If you explore some of the questions that appear in a variety of different subjects. Let's take English language for a moment and consider the representation of the working class in advertisements. If your question was to examine two examples and explore the ways that representations affect a feminist reading of a paper, instead of saying, in this essay, I am going to explore the ways that feminists would approach different representations of the working class, which is a fairly interesting topic, you need to engage with what the question is asking you to do from the offset. So instead of starting with, in this essay, I am going to, use the question words to get you started. So say, feminists are often concerned with the equal opportunities and often are misrepresented as. Get straight into the essence of the question rather than preempting what your essay is going to do. That is one way to make your writing slightly more academic. Let's look at another. Picking up on one of the themes in sociology is when you're writing a piece, often you are trying to buy your time or pick up the marks, and there's often an assumption that the examiner doesn't necessarily know what you're doing. But trust me, as an examiner, I understand the theories that you are going to be writing about, so you don't need to spend time spelling it out. Let's take a look at this example. Marxists would argue that the bourgeoisie control the proletariat. The bourgeoisie control the proletariat through alienation. Alienation is where workers don't have a relationship with the product they produce. Now, all of this need not exist. You could eliminate that because it's not actually doing anything for you. You've made your point. Marxists would argue that the bourgeoisie control the proletariat. Now you need to engage again with your question. If you're going to repeat yourself and reiterate some really basic principles, you're setting yourself up for a very descriptive response. Assume that the examiner that is going to be marking your work is intelligent. You don't have to state the obvious. There's another thing in this piece as well. any piece of academic writing wouldn't use the contraction form of the word. If you want to maintain that element of academia, make sure that your writing is very formal, rather than representative of a conversation that you might have with your friends. Definitely worth bearing in mind. Let's look at the next one. Who has ever written an essay and been infuriated when this squiggly blue line appears? You right click, and what does it tell you? It's passive voice. Quick question though, how many of you know what passive voice is? What do you do when that blue squiggly line appears? Do you delete it? Do you press ignore? Or do you actually notice that you need to put it into active voice? Without getting into the rubrics of language in too much detail, there are two different types of sentences. As I've mentioned, you've got the active voice and the passive voice. The active voice is where the object, so it's subject, verb, object, where you've got the process taking place. So, I kick the ball is active voice. Notice, no blue squiggly lines, nothing to be worried about in that one. The person, the verb, the object. Subject, verb, object. Passive voice is where that has been moved around. So the ball, the object, the verb, was kicked against the wall. Well, who did it? It clouds our understanding of what's taken place. It starts to undermine the clarity of your argument, and that's why that blue squiggly line flags up. You've potentially lost clarity, and formal writing needs to maintain that direction, that sense of clarity, and that methodology that your teachers so often talk to you about. Last one. A really simple sentence in front of you, quite literally, the old woman. What often happens when I read a piece of work is that a student goes, doesn't sound smart enough. How can I make that sound better? So everybody knows the trick that you right click it, you run your way down to synonyms, and you immediately go, let's look for the one that sounds so much better. Let's go deep-rooted. Does the deep-rooted woman mean the same as the old woman? No. What you have to be very careful of, especially in any class or A-level that has a coursework, is overuse of the synonym. I've also seen instances where students have right-clicked and picked a word that they don't understand. And that shows up very, very quickly. Your teachers know, and I've asked students in the past, can you explain that concept to me? And that really starts to draw attention to a student's weakness. Always make sure that the clarity of your work is far more important to you than how good it sounds. It's not necessarily a trick that wins in every situation. So as I mentioned, and in most of these videos, I give you the opportunity to think of an activity that you can do that's going to enhance your skill set in this particular area. One way that you can do that is by engaging with other pieces of academic writing that exist already and will be incredibly useful to you. So, your challenge for today: go online and find yourself an article in Google Scholar. There are an awful lot, so pick an article that is relevant to your particular study, whether that be geography, business studies, or media. Go and find a scholarly article, read it, critique it, identify how it maintains the sense of academic voice that you aspire, and then spend a few moments writing yourself a checklist. Have a look at your own work. What sort of things do you do often that undermines the academic elements of your own writing? Maybe you could make a really small laminate that you can keep with you as a gentle reminder of ways to break the bad habits and introduce some good ones. I look forward to seeing your responses, and hopefully we'll be able to crack this academic writing and get into those high grade boundaries.